While plenty of progress seems to have been made in Hollywood lately regarding the treatment of talent by those in power, old Hollywood was filled with some incredibly corrupt studio heads. Though it's easy to get nostalgic for the days of the past, these true stories might make you see classic entertainment in a new light. Join Facts First as we explore studio heads from classic Hollywood who were actually terrible people. Louis B. Mayer. Louis B. Mayer was the head of MGM Studios, and he had a particularly ruthless view of the way he treated the studio's stars. According to Louis, stars weren't born, but made. In particular, he made stars, and he felt that fact entitled him to a good deal of authority over them. If one of the stars at MGM didn't want to do what Louis wanted, they would face the studio head's wrath. That wrath would often see them forced to sit through one of his loud tantrums. However, he also sometimes got physical with the stars. On the surface, Louis presented himself as a calm and balanced person who the stars of MGM could look up to as a father figure. But that changed once you truly got to know him. Still, there were some stars who maintained respect for the mogul. After all, it was he who was in charge of MGM when the studio put out such classics as The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind. Louis liked to exert a good deal of control over the stars in his stable, and even tried his best to make sure his stars only went to physicians he recommended. During his teenage years, star Mickey Rooney was lectured by Louis about his public behavior. Though Mickey claims to have been terrified, he maintained respect for the studio head due to Louis's immeasurable business talents. Many other stars have shared less kind words about Louis. This includes Elizabeth Taylor, who called him a monster while she was working for him. Of all the stars that the studio head mistreated, the one who received his abuse the worst was arguably Judy Garland. Louis sexually abused Judy when she was only a teenager, groping her breasts and forcing her to sit on his lap. Louis would also bully the poor young woman, which many credit for her immense self-esteem issues later in life. Louis made fun of her posture and commented on her weight, and Judy later suffered from numerous eating disorders. Louis worked Judy Garland to the bone, and she got to the point where she had a mental breakdown and couldn't show up to set. This resulted in Louis firing her, and she subsequently attempted suicide. Once Louis was done obsessing over one of his starlets, he would move on to the next one and leave the prior one to rot. The studio head was also incredibly afraid of germs, and this phobia often got in the way of him living a comfortable life. Howard Hughes. Speaking of germaphobes, another studio head from classic Hollywood, who seems to have been a terrible person, was Howard Hughes. Known for his work in aviation before his entrance into the film industry, Howard was one of the most eccentric individuals of his time. Though the obsession that drove Howard most during his lifetime was arguably aviation, he made waves in Hollywood upon his entrance. Though Howard had always been known as eccentric, he seems to have become much more so in Hollywood. Amongst the beautiful denizens of the entertainment industry, Howard had a field day helping himself to any young starlet he could find. He didn't seem to care much how old they were. He apparently enjoyed giving young girls a chance to get away from their parents and didn't mind being the one to take their virginity. Howard Hughes' entrance into the industry came with the 1930s feature Hell's Angels, which he directed. He subsequently began producing other people's films, including producing Howard Hawks' Scarface in 1932. When Howard put actresses under contract with his studio, he evidently became very controlling of their personal lives. Hughes turned Hollywood into a buffet where he could satiate his sexual desires, and there were many young women whose lives were ruined because of the eccentric studio head. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Facts First for more, and stick around for more awful studio heads. David O. Selznick. David O. Selznick was a studio head who infamously lost out on the rights to Gone with the Wind. Years after that, he sizzled out of Hollywood to little fanfare after making a strange feature film that seemed to be dedicated purely to objectifying his own mistress, Jennifer Jones. During her time with David, Jennifer infamously tried to commit suicide and then had to have her stomach pumped. David's wife was named Irene, and she left him after finding out about Jennifer. David's last American film was dedicated to his mistress and was called Portrait of Jenny. The film cost 3 times as much as it ended up making, and David didn't live much longer after that. Jack Warner. Everyone's heard of Warner Brothers, but did you know that the studio is named after actual brothers? The Warner Brothers were real people, and the most notable of them was Jack Warner. There were 4 Warner brothers in charge of the studio, and Jack was the biggest dog. The brothers were all ruthless, but Jack was the most ruthless. They had grown up as an immigrant family with 11 children and had learned to fight to get the things they wanted. In Hollywood, Jack's ruthless practices could be seen in his treatment of his stars. However, those who received Jack's abuses the worst were arguably his family members, including the 3 brothers he started Warner Brothers with. Jack always treated his brothers terribly, though things came to a head in the 1950s when he tricked them out of their shares of the studio. After scamming his brothers out of their shares, he subsequently became the studio's head. One of the brothers Jack Warner scammed was Harry Warner, who died 2 years later. Harry died after suffering a series of strokes, and other members of the family were quick to point out that the stress he'd been dealing with after getting scammed out of his share of the studio that he helped create was arguably what killed him. At Harry's funeral, his widow declared during a speech that Jack Warner had killed her husband. Mere days after Harry Warner's funeral, Jack Warner got into a car crash that landed him in a coma. He ended up recovering and lived another 2 decades. He finally passed away in 1978 after suffering from his own series of strokes. At his death, the studio head was 86. In the years after claiming the throne of Warner Brothers, Jack remained estranged from his family. Harry Cohn. Harry Cohn was the head of Columbia Pictures for nearly 4 decades, from 1919 to 1958. During that time, Harry reportedly took advantage of his power to have sex with many actresses who worked at the studio. Though this type of behavior has since become a Hollywood stereotype, many consider Harry to be one of the originators. Despite the fact Harry treated his talent the wrong way, the studio head was still incredibly successful when it came to business. Columbia Pictures started out as one of the lowest studios in all of Hollywood and eventually became one of the industry's biggest players. Harry considered himself to be the dictator of Columbia Pictures, and that meant he always got his way. This was true even when the things Harry wanted had nothing to do with the movies he was making. Harry loved taking advantage of his female actresses and also loved spying on the various film sets around the studio. The studio head apparently had equipment done up all around the set that would allow him to listen in on others' conversations and make sure they weren't speaking ill of him. If they were, he would surprise them on the intercom. One of the stars Harry was said to have treated the worst was Rita Hayworth. Harry got Rita her start in the industry. However, he only did so under the presumption that the Spanish actress was going to have sex with him in return. Once it became apparent to Harry that Rita wasn't interested in giving him any sexual favors in exchange for the contract he'd given her, he set about harassing and stalking her to show her who was boss. Another star who faced his wrath was Kim Novak. Harry and Kim were together before Kim left him for Sammy Davis Jr. This made Harry so mad he put out a mob hit on the singer. Perhaps as retribution, Harry ended up dying himself only a few months later. Now it's time to hear from you. Which of these stories was the most surprising to hear? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Facts First if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.